Have you ever had an extremely wacky time during your high school years? In this anime recap, we'll explore some unique characters in Katagiri Senior High and their colorful high school experience. The story starts with Kyuko fondly narrating her time during that year in school, as they will graduate soon. Then we jump on their class trip to Kyoto, and Yuki, Hori's friend, is excited as she and her other classmates will be experiencing many sights on this trip. Toru tries to calm her down, but Yuki smacks him in the face, and they meet up with Shu, who bought souvenirs on the first day of the trip. Their excitement shifted to worry, as Miyamura may not be able to take a bath on this trip. You'll find out why it is late. Hori said that the girls have their ensuite bathroom, and the boys are using the public bath. Knowing this, Hori just wished him good luck, as there wasn't much she could do about Miyamura's situation, making them doubtful that he'd enjoy the entire trip. Miyamura realizes he'll be sharing a room with Toru and Shu, which he dreaded. The class arrived at the hotel and everyone had already settled in, except for Toru and Miyamura, who got locked out by Shu, who fell asleep inside the room. After a lot of screaming, they finally woke up Shu, and he's still groggy as Toru is telling him off. Miyamura checked the itinerary to see what was next on the agenda, and to his surprise and dread, everyone needed to take a bath before dinner. Later on, Miyamura's group is in the shower area, but Miyamura still doesn't want to go to the public bath and asks for help from Toru. Just then he remembers Miyamura's tattoos. Toru had to act fast and make an excuse, so he said that Miyamura was unwell, but Shu pried even more. So to stop the conversation, Toru impulsively said that Miyamura was on his period, which shocked the boys. Not quite the save coming from a friend, but it broke the tension. So Miyamura just went with it and confirmed that this was true, even if it was not. That's quite an embarrassing moment, but I'm pretty sure everyone had their fair share of oopsies while we were still at school. If you have any memorable high school moments, comment below. All right, back to the story. Miyamura walked gloomily into the hall and bumped into Hori. After explaining what happened, Hori got a laugh out of it, but she offered Miyamura to use the shower in their room instead. Miyamura accepted the offer and finally took a much-needed shower and felt relieved. He then asked Hori if another guy was in the same situation as he was. Would she have offered him the shower in her room? Miyamura thinks Hori shouldn't just offer things like that to anyone, but then he says that she let him in. Hori realized that she almost got caught catching feelings and asked if Miyamura would do anything to her in that situation. Miyamura played hot and cold and kept her guessing, and he soon left her room, with Hori thinking about what he had said. But as Miyamura walked back to his room, he noticed that he forgot to return Hori's towel. The next day, the gang was strolling when Shu and Toru were engaging in their usual rowdy behavior, so Yuki scolded and embarrassed them. Hori and Miyamura talked about how he'll go about his shower situation. Miyamura said that he'll just take a bath later on, as the students who missed the first bath can take a bath later at night. This frustrated Hori, as she'd been thinking about their last conversation the whole day, and she felt stupid for even reveling in the thought of what Miyamura said. So, in retaliation, she said she'd shower until 11 p.m. Yuki said that she'd turn into a prune if she did that. The school trip ended, and Yuki and Hori looked at the photos they took during their time in Kyoto. High school may not be forever, but the memories you make with your friends will always stay with you. Hori caught up with Miyamura and told him that she enjoyed the trip, and Miyamura felt the same way. Back in school the next day, Miyamura gets accidentally drenched by Remi, the girlfriend of Sengoku, the student council president, because Remi thinks that Miyamura is a different guy because of his new haircut. Remi then offered to give him a towel in the infirmary to dry up, and Remi watched him closely and wondered why he hadn't taken off his sweater yet. This made Miyamura nervous. Remi started interrogating him with different questions on why he never showed his skin. So Miyamura took his chance to throw Remi's boyfriend, Sengoku, in the equation and asked how Sengoku also doesn't show his skin. Still, Remi dismissed this, and she said that he was all right and that there was nothing wrong with him. Miyamura dug himself a deeper grave as Remi said that Sengoku mentioned that he only changes in the toilet or an empty classroom. Remi then tried to touch Miyamura's chest to check if he was a real boy or a girl, which shocked Miyamura. Toru and Miyamura talked about what happened and how they'll resolve his uniform problem, as Miyamura's sweater made him uncomfortable. Toru suggested a sweater vest, but Miyamura said that his arms would be shown. This reminded Miyamura of the time he wore Hori's middle school uniform appeared, and he got caught lacking in 4K by Toru, but Toru didn't have a problem with it. As a matter of fact, he thinks he's rocking the fit. Toru bugged Miyamura to wear it again, but Miyamura strongly refused, and as they went on, the conversation took a pretty weird turn, As Toru and Miyamura began debating the best lady's outfit, Toru went with the Sailor Moon outfit, while Miyamura went with the blazer. Sengoku happened to pass by and got dragged into the conversation, so he went with the sports attire. Miyamura and Toru felt like Sengoku was a bit perverted and started guessing the type of sports attire he was into. Meanwhile, Hori was by the door overhearing this entire manly conversation. Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Remi fondly reminisced about Sengoku's skinny body and how she likes her guys thin and slender. Miyamura and Sengoku just got hit with some shattering news from Mr. Yasuda, their English teacher, who mentioned that they needed to swim on the final day of the swimming activity. Miyamura, being the reluctant rebel that he is, protested and asked why only the guys had to go for a swim. Mr. Yasuda agreed, but it seemed like he had his own intentions with this question, making Miyamura question his credibility. The two, out of desperation, compared stripping them naked to skinning them alive. Yikes. Miyamura even went with his time of the month, and Sengoku also made the same excuse. Mr. Yasuda and the two boys went into a ridiculous debate, as Miyamura and Sengoku kept on throwing out ridiculous excuses, like how Sengoku's arms would explode on that day, or Miyamura coming to English class naked. Eventually, Mr. Yasuda caved, promising to talk to Miss Sasaki to get them excused for the day. It's swim day, and for Sengoku and Miyamura, it was their job to clean out the side of the pool. But with all the distractions from their classmates and the teasing of the girls from another class, it became a difficult task. With all the shenanigans, they got scolded by their teacher. Mr. Yasuda popped in for a visit to check in on the boys, but got yanked away by Miss Terajima because needs to supervise other classes, leaving Sengoku and Miyamura to fend for themselves. Toru noticed that Sengoku didn't join them in the pool and was curious as to why he was on a sit-out. He understands well enough why Miyamura can't swim because of his tattoos. Shu played around too much and almost drowned, but after getting off the pool, he asked why they were on a sit-out. Toru just said that Miyamura was on his period and that Sengoku's arms exploded. The next day, we have Hori fondly thinking about the fall season, but Sengoku and Miyamura's minds are elsewhere and are dreading the upcoming sports day as more students started to submit their sports day forms. The boys panicked to their core, and in their desperation, the two started doing a rain dance. The group started discussing team-ups with Toru and Miyamura on the same team, while Hori and Sengoku were on the opposing team. Sengoku thought that Miyamura and Hori had broken up, which annoyed Hori, but Sengoku had to clear that up. But Sengoku found out that Yuki and Shu were in the same team, leaving him feeling like a slacker. Sakura noticed that as well, but she is a part of the cheerleading team for this year's sports day event, despite admitting the fact that she has no rhythm. She got motivated, however, after finding out that she would be on the same team as Toru. This motivation soon turned into worry when she remembered her performance last year because she didn't want that to happen again, especially now that Toru would be watching. So she joined Miyamura and Sengoku in their rain dance ritual. But hey, whatever works, right? On their way home from school, Hori spoke to Miyamura about how Sengoku should participate in the sports event at school. But they both knew that he was never good at sports anyway, and Hori wished that he was as active as his little brother Soda. This made Miyamura recall some bad times he had at the previous sports events. So Hori, being the supportive girlfriend that she is, encouraged and motivated Miyamura to give his best as she will be doing the same thing. She admits that she's not good at sports, but she joins the event just for the fun of it and pushes Miyamura to do the same and to cheer for other students who are taking part in the event. Miyamura asks if Hori will cheer for him too, even if he's in a different team. Hori got caught off guard again with her answer. Now Miyamura feels a bit more motivated to participate and give his best in the sports event, and will participate in the 100-meter sprint. The next day, we see Sakura practicing her cheers, and she's exhausted because she wants to get this right, and she knows that Toru might be watching on that day. Yuki approached Sakura and tried to strike up a conversation with her. Sakura was a little too busy practicing, and admitted that doing well in cheerleading was the best that she could do. Yuki watched her closely and realized that she needed help. She started teaching her the moves she needed to learn. Even though they were on different teams, Sakura was able to follow along because of Yuki's outgoing personality. Seeing all this, Sengoku recalled how Sakura had mentioned how much she didn't like dancing, but now he was glad that Sakura was having a lot of fun, and he smiled, knowing she had people supporting her. During their cooking class, Sakura recalled her traumatic experience with Sengoku and Remi, as the couple cannot do anything right when cooking. They're making a lot of mess. They can't follow the simplest instructions. Sengoku even got cut, and Remi concocted something toxic that sent the entire class into a state of panic. Back to the present, Sakura looked at them sternly, and sure enough, They were still quite the same on this day as Remy and Sengoku bought the wrong vegetables for the curry and even peeled all of them until there was nothing left. Everyone in the class knew that they were going to screw up, so they made an extra pot of curry for them. Just don't ask Sengoku to reheat it because he'll burn it to smithereens. Remy, on the other hand, wasn't able to cook rice properly, and they all had to eat mushy, porridge-like rice. Wow! These two can't catch a break, but Sakura remains calm and collected during this ordeal. Feeling extremely bad, Sengoku and Remy took the L and told Sakura that she'd make a good wife and that both of them would never be able to marry because of their lack of cooking skills. All this praise inflated Sakura's ego and even said that she'll take care of the both of them if ever they won't be able to find a life partner. In another classroom, Yuki is distributing the shirts for the sports event, and Yuki teases Miyamura about beating Hori at the event. A lot of people kept on asking Yuki for their shirts all at once, and this made her so frustrated that she threw the shirts in the air. Toru asked about the event Miyamura signed up for, and he suggested doing the relay instead. He remembered how Shu joined and got overtaken at the relay race back in 10th grade, but Miyamura was too shy to participate in such a sport. They thought of Sengoku joining the event, and they assumed that they'd already win since Sengoku's presence was already a victory by default. Toru mentioned that females would be participating in cheerleading events, and Miyamura started thinking of how Hori would look in a cheer outfit. But this fantasy soon disappeared after seeing Hori in a male high school uniform outfit. During English class, Hori caught sight of Miyamura talking to another girl. Toru felt Hori's jealous stare, and it made him quite nervous. Hori sounded like a possessed person when Mr. Yasuda asked her to read something out loud. Shortly after, Miyamura explained that he wasn't doing anything wrong and that he had just lent his seatmate his textbook since she had forgotten hers at home. Hori is in denial about her jealousy towards Miyamura's seatmate, but even Yuki knows this and advises Hori not to worry about it. Yuki needed to be in another room, so Hori volunteered to take over her painting work. Hori got cold while she was painting. She even sneezed because of it. A guy named Mizuchi noticed her and offered his jacket to Hori. She refused the offer, but Mizuchi lent it to her anyway and left. Miyamura then approached Hori and saw the jacket. Miyamura took the jacket and exchanged it for his sweater. He wore Mizuchi's sweater instead and helped Hori paint the rest of the signs. A little later, Miyamura took off the jacket, got his sweater back, and left. Shortly after, Mizuchi returned and got his jacket back and went back to his class. Miyamura returned and hoped that Mizuchi would never make a big deal out of lending Hori his jacket, as Miyamura wore it anyway. Hori realizes that Miyamura is jealous and teases him even more, making him feel embarrassed. Mizuchi wonders why his whole jacket feels warm when he thinks that Hori only used this as a blanket for her thighs. It's sports day, and everyone is ready. The athlete's oath is led by a pale-looking Sengoku. He's drained because he knows that he has to participate. Miyamura is glad that Sengoku came to school on sports day. Although Hori told Sengoku that Miyamura was participating, he felt like he needed to show up too. Miyamura smiled and told Hori that she's the reason why he's motivated to participate, as he still made a promise to beat her at the games. Everyone cheered and shouted as the opening of the sports day was announced. It's a battle between Remy and Sakura versus Yuki and Hori during the hurdle event. When it was Remy and Hori's turn to participate, the boys were cheering on the girls. But since Hori was on a different team, she was confused as to whether Miyamura was cheering for her or Remy. Remy took this opportunity to stir the pot and told Hori that Miyamura was cheering for her and even went as far as to bet that if she won, Miyamura would be hers. This fazed Hori and fell last in the race and even knocked over the hurdles, but she still kept going. Miyamura and the others were watching the race, and Miyamura felt a little embarrassed. Remy won the race and secured the first and second place. Hori felt embarrassed for not being able to win first place and even thought of how she motivated Miyamura to do her best. Miyamura, seeing his girlfriend trying her best to finish the race, stood up and cheered for Hori. This made Hori blush, and as Miyamura sat down, Hori burst towards the finish line out of sheer embarrassment, but she still placed fourth. After the race, Hori confronted Remy about what she said about the race. Remy said that she and Miyamura are inseparable, and that she was only joking about stealing Miyamura as she already has Sengoku. She was just trying to tease her to motivate her into doing her best, or really she just wanted to phase Hori to win first place. Miyamura approached Hori and Remy left, giving a sly look towards the couple. Miyamura asked how Hori was because she hurt her knee during the race, and he asked what happened. Hori was already too embarrassed by the situation, so she just said that it was his fault, but Miyamura was only doing what a good boyfriend did. However, Hori thanked Miyamura for cheering for her despite being last in the race. During the tug-of-war event, Sawada will be participating as a junior of their year. Sawada shouted at Hori, calling her Hori-senpai. Sawada tried her best, but ended up losing, failing her objective of impressing Hori. In the next event, the obstacle relay, both teams East and West were cheering for their respective participants. Team East's cheerleaders, however, had more threats than cheers compared to Team West's cheerleaders. This made Shu envious of Team West's cheerleaders. The obstacle relay started, and Team West's Toru had a lot of supporters and cheers from Miyamura, Remi, and Sakura, who blushed at the sight of Toru. Toru noticed how active and happy Miyamura was. Sengoku congratulated Shu for getting a draw with Toru and sent Yuki's regards to him. Team East readied their cheerleaders with their male high school uniform at the next event and performed with a masculine-like cheer. Miyamura was petrified after seeing Hori in a male high school uniform. Team West, on the other hand, had a cutesier cheer, and it seems all the guys preferred Team West's cheerleaders, and the girls preferred Team East's. Sakura tried her hardest to follow along and completed the choreography. Yuki congratulated Sakura for completing the cheer, and Sakura thanked her for helping her out. A little later, Miyamura needed to fill in for someone in another event, the scavenger hunt. Miyamura recalled how he used to sit on the sidelines and watch everyone else until the sports day was done. But this time, he recalled all the people supporting him and pushing him to give his best. The hunt starts, and students are scrambling to get the needed person written on a piece of paper given to them. Yuki placed first as she got Mr. Yasuda, fitting the description of a suspicious person. On the next batch, Miyamura and Hori bumped into one another, and Miyamura explained why he had to be in the race. Toru, Sakura, and Remi were cheering for their candidate, and Toru noticed that Sengoku was just there. Sengoku explained that he was just hiding there and that he didn't want to participate in the scavenger hunt, so he refused to sub for somebody. Suddenly, Miyamura and Hori started dragging Sengoku into the race. When the scavenger hunt finished and Sengoku looked at their papers, he got mad at Miyamura for choosing him as a candidate for skinny person compared to Hori's requirement, which read Student Council President. During the cavalry battle, Shu and Sengoku from Team East will be against Miyamura and Toru from Team West. Sengoku was a little motivated after being placed at the top. The cheerleaders in the tent are going off, cheering for their respective candidates. Toru and Shu tried teasing Miyamura and Sengoku, trying to get them jealous because their respective girlfriends were cheering for another guy on their team. They're mature enough to understand that they'll cheer for their teammate. It is a sports event, after all. The event started, and all the other guys faced off to get each other's headbands. Sengoku and Miyamura faced one another. After a long and tiring attempt to steal each other's headbands, Miyamura got the headband and won by tricking Sengoku into thinking that a ghost was on his shoulder. Hori saw Miyamura's victory and let out a subtle smile. The event ended, and Sakura and Remi talked about how they were in the lead, but lost in the end. Remi felt bad since Sakura gave her all in cheerleading. This made Sakura happy as her efforts finally paid off. After checking and tending to his sunburnt nose, Miyamura got out of the bathroom. He saw Hori in a cheerleader uniform and finally got his wish. Miyamura thought of how much Hori had been there for him, motivating him to do better. And even during sports day, he fondly thought of the memories they shared and how much he changed because of it. Miyamura said that Hori looked cute in her actual cheerleading outfit, which made her blush as she ran away to her other classmates, calling him an idiot on her way out. Miyamura, Sota, and Hori are all studying in their room. Miyamura isn't too confident with his knowledge of classical literature. Hori's father, Kiyosuke, barged into their study session, and Hori asked him to stay away. Kiyosuke still joined in, despite his daughter's rejection. They all fell asleep later on, with the television still running. Miyamura woke up and turned off the TV. Miyamura tried getting up, but his leg got locked between Hori's legs. Kiyosuke woke up and tried getting off the table, but Hori screamed in pain as her legs were tangled as well. Everyone at the table except Sota, who is sleeping soundly, has all of their legs tangled in a knot. After a time of thinking of crazy solutions and a lot of arguing, they finally got their legs out, and Miyamura rushed to the bathroom just in time before his bladder exploded. Later, Miyamura suggested that they all sleep the same way instead of sleeping across from one another. Kiyosuke went out and bumped into Sengoku. Kiyosuke recognized Sengoku as Hori's playmate when they were kids, and he complimented Sengoku's growth. At this moment, Sengoku remembered something his father told him, a warning of sorts about the Hori family. Kiyosuke asked how Sengoku's father was doing, and when he said that his father was doing well, Kiyosuke answered grimly. This scared Sengoku, and before he could even try to leave, Kiyosuke dragged him to his house to visit his friends. Hori woke up at midnight and noticed that Sengoku and Horimiya were talking in their sleep. so she butted in, and that terrified them as they woke up. Sengoku explained why he was there and that he needed to eat and take a bath. Hori offered to use their shower and even told them to take a bath together. Miyamura tried hinting at Hori to stop, and Sengoku was curious as to why he was so sensitive about his body. He then remembered the incident that happened to Miyamura during the school trip. He took a bath late, and he wouldn't get in the pool with the other students, so Miyamura tried covering this up by saying that he was skinny, but Sengoku wasn't buying it. The next day, Hori and Miyamura fell asleep again, and Hori woke up to realize how late it was. Miyamura left his phone open, and Hori tried reading the text messages out of curiosity. These texts are actually from Miyamura's best friend Shindu, and he accidentally sent them to Miyamura when the message was meant for another girl. Hori saw the entire heartfelt message, and she got so angry that she punched Miyamura right in the forehead. Miyamura woke up in shock and pain and realized that it was late. He tried talking to Hori, but she was too upset to say anything, so Miyamura tried feeding her mandarins. He did this with his mouth and left Hori feeling extremely flustered. Back at Sengoku's place, Toru and Miyamura are looking at some old photo albums and reminiscing about the old days. Sengoku tried to hide another album, but the other two caught on and swiped the album. Sengoku offered to play Super Nintendo instead, but it was too late. Miyamura saw Sengoku's picture with a bad haircut, and the two made fun of Sengoku. Miyamura flipped to the next page and saw Sengoku and Hori in a kiddie pool together. They were still kids at the time. Miyamura immediately closed the album, and Sengoku and Toru checked to see what picture made him react that way. They called him a lolicon after finding out. Sengoku remembered how Hori wasn't conscious about changing clothes in front of other people, and even told them a story of one time when Hori changed clothes in front of him because she was running late for gym class. Toru and Miyamura pitied Sengoku because they thought that Hori was belittling him. When Sengoku asked Hori if she'd change in front of Miyamura, her answer changed, and she would never do that even in a million years. The trio tried to recall when the last time they took baths together was, and with an unsure remark, they said that it was only until kindergarten that they did that. Hori and Miyamura are out together. Hori found some snack soda liked, and she wanted to give them a try. While walking to the counter, Hori bumped into Sengoku's dad, who commended Sengoku for being a helpful boy. Miyamura introduced himself to Sengoku's father and gave a fair warning to Miyamura about the Horus, and Hori heard all of that. After that, Miyamura and Hori talked about how their parents and Sengoku's dad met. They all went to the same high school. Miyamura wondered what they looked like back then. Hori asked how Miyamura's parents looked back then, but during that conversation, Miyamura dropped the snack Hori gave him. Back at the Sengoku household, Kyosuke, Takeru, and his son Kakeru are very quiet. Kyosuke tried breaking the ice, but Takeru just dismissed it. Kakeru is stuck between a rock and a hard place by trying to get his dad and Kyosuke to strike up a conversation, but it ends up in an argument. Miyamura and Hori came in just in time. Sengoku told them how he and his father were abducted by Kyosuke. Miyamura joked about how getting kidnapped runs in Sengoku's family. Takeru noticed how Miyamura was acting so casually in the Hori household. Sengoku told him that Hori and Miyamura were dating, but Takeru responded by saying that his son didn't need a dating life as it would interfere with his studies. Miyamura, Hori, and Sengoku talked about why he hadn't told his father yet. Sengoku did try and wanted to introduce Remi at Christmas, but they ended up going to Remi's place instead. Hori saw an opportunity to make Sengoku admit to his dad that he was dating. Sengoku is stuck between a rock and a hard place because of Hori's terrifying attitude and Miyamura's carefree storytelling, which ends up with Miyamura talking too much. Kyosuke tried giving rational advice to Takeru, but he dismissed it, saying that he shouldn't intervene in other people's affairs. This conversation led to a clash of two different parental ideals, so much so that they started bringing back some embarrassing high school memories, like how Takeru fell knee-deep in what he thought was a small puddle, and how Kyosuke missed the exams because his bike wheels got stolen. Sengoku felt terrified seeing the two argue, but Hori acted as if this happened all the time. Miyamura, on the other hand, admired how close the two were. The argument went on, and Miyamura saw how history was repeating itself with the Horus and Sengokus. During their walk home, Takeru warned his son that having a girlfriend is not something that he needs right now. Kakeru wants to muster up the courage to tell his dad about Remi. Back at the Hori household, Miyamura and Hori are doing some homework. Miyamura is still lazing off, and Hori tells him to try and get going with this math homework. Hori is eating some mandarins, and Miyamura warns her that her nails will turn orange, and sure enough, they do. Hori fed Miyamura oranges instead. Hori was amused by how Miyamura eats, so she tried feeding him some more. Miyamura ended up licking her finger to clean off the rest of the mandarin and acted like nothing happened after that. We go over to the Yura household, where Shu is watching TV with his sister Motoko. Shu told her that someone from her school had called their home and asked for her, which surprised Motoko, since she didn't realize how easily Shu had deduced that the boy was looking for her. Shu told her that he hung up on the guy, and this infuriated Motoko. Shu said that he did that because Motoko was taking a bath at that time. Frustrated, Motoko was hoping that Shu treated him better, and with this, Shu easily figured out that his little sister liked this guy, a boy in her class named Kitahara. Shu warned her not to bring home any boys when he's not around, so Motoko went on the defense and said that Kitahara likes someone else, who sadly already has a boyfriend. Motoko wished that it had been her, since they always hung out together. But while she was pouring her heart out, Shu disappeared and went into the kitchen to get some snacks. Motoko wondered why he called, and Shu nonchalantly said that their study session was cancelled. Irritated, Motoko wished that he just could have said that in the first place. Back at school, Miyamura and Yuki are both drained and have just finished their English exam. At the back, Shu and Toru decide to go get some food, but Shu receives a message from his sister, saying that a friend is coming over, and since he'll be late coming home, she's hoping that Shu will take his time before coming home. At the Yura household, Madoka prepared the tea set and snacks for her visitor. She replayed in her head the time Kitahara asked if they could study together, and Motoko was reading into it too much. Motoko heard someone come in, but to her surprise, it was Shu who came home early only to find out that his sister was having her crush over. Shu prepared himself and asked his grandfather for his model sword. Shu demanded that Motoko study in the living room so that he could watch over them, but Motoko didn't like this and wished that his brother had a love life so he could be busy with something else. So to cheer her up, Shu offered to make tea, but Motoko preferred that he just leave. Shu is just being a protective brother, so it's understandable that he keeps an eye on the two. Kitahara finally arrived at the Yura household, only to see Shu and Motoko drawing swords against one another. Motoko felt embarrassed and muttered, "Hi," while holding a sword. Shu placed the sword in the sheath and sternly welcomed Kitahara. Kitahara admired Shu's demeanor, thought he was a cool high schooler, and even accepted Shu's hospitality despite being too serious. Motoko, on the other hand, wants to crawl under a rock to hide her shame and bitterness. Nevertheless, she just went on studying with Kitahara. Kitahara returned the next day, and Shu offered an even bitter tea. Kitahara accepted, and after making the tea, Shu went ahead and sat near them to keep watch. Kitahara didn't seem to mind Shu's presence. Motoko, on the other hand, was bothered very much, so Shu got kicked out of the living room. Kitahara took a liking to Shu and didn't even listen to what Motoko was saying. Later, Motoko cries at how Shu stole Kitahara's attention, and Shu doesn't even understand what's going on with the kid. Motoko even blamed their genetics for looking alike. Shu told her jokingly to blame her mom for that, and to ease her worries, he said that since they look alike, they're very attractive. In her disbelief, Motoko said that if it were true, then Shu would have a harem of girls flocking to him. Are you enjoying the story so far? Leave a like and a comment down below. If you also have an embarrassing experience introducing your high school crush to your family, do tell us in the comments. Back at school, Toru, Hori, and Shu are talking about Motoko and Shu's identical appearance. Hori went on to say that Shu's sister is adorable, and Toru advised that Motoko should consider growing her hair, but Shu said her hair would be messy if she did that. The gang agreed that Motoko was a pretty adorable kid, and Shu thought that since they were identical, he should be cute too. But his friend said that they were talking about Motoko and not him. Miyamura and Yuki are also in the room, and advised that since she's in puberty, she should enjoy her time before she's in heat, which is wrong because Motoko isn't a dog. This also worried Shu, as Motoko once told him to stop flirting and just hook up with Sengoku, and she even thought that all texts from his friends were girls when they were from Toru and Miyamura. Hori said that since Motoko had her crush visit her home, her insecurities might come from some misplaced frustration. Shu explained that the guy Motoko likes might have a crush on him. Yuki and Hori felt sorry for Motoko, as she may not be able to find true love because of what they heard. To clear everything out, Shu said that he likes Sengoku, but of course, that was taken out of context, and Sengoku overheard this. Shu is already embarrassed enough, so Toru advises that Shu should just get a girlfriend. But Toru makes it sound so easy, like getting candy from a store. But the thing is, Shu doesn't even know what kind of girl he likes. The next day, Shu overslept and rushed to school as he was already running late. Shu ran to school with a piece of toast in his mouth and bumped into Yuki, who also had toast in her mouth, hoping that the guy he bumped into was a hot student. But alas, Her stereotypical anime fantasy is short-lived after finding out that she only bumped into Shu. They walked together and also met with some of their other friends, Toru and Miyamura, who were also running late, carrying their breakfasts while they rushed to school. But they realized they were going to be late anyway, so they just all walked together. Upon arriving at school, the gang met Sengoku in the locker room and were all surprised that he'd been late. Sengoku explained that all third-year students have classes only in the afternoon, and he's early because he has student council matters to attend to. Hori met up with them later on in the classroom and explained that some middle schoolers are checking their school for their high school applications. Remy came into the room and invited Hori to get something in the cafeteria, and Toru and Shu followed along. A lot of middle schoolers are roaming around the school. Shu thought that his sister would never go to stuff like this, but suddenly, he saw Kitahara in the hallway and instantly hid out of embarrassment. Toru was seen by Kitahara's group and asked for directions to the school field. Kitahara's group left, but Hori and Remy tried dragging out Shu, and Remy called out his last name. Kitahara looked back and saw Shu, and he even went as far as calling him senpai, or his senior. It was too late to walk away, so when Kitahara approached him, Shu tried to scold him and push him away. Suddenly, Mr. Yasuda snuck up behind him to deliver a karate chop at the back of Shu's head and scolded him for scolding the middle schoolers. Although Toru thought that they got scared because of his sneak attack, Hori and Remy started interrogating Kitahara, and he asked if his senpai Shu had a girlfriend. Hori and Remy giggled and wanted to get to know Kitahara more, so Hori tried dragging him along, but Kitahara refused as he needed to go back with his schoolmates. Mr. Yasuda offered to guide them to where they needed to be. At the Sengoku household, Kakeru is having a sleepover with Shu and Toru, much to his parents' surprise that he had friends come over to their house. Kakeru's room was cramped, and there wasn't enough space for them, and after a long debate with Shu and Toru, he decided to sleep at the loft bed with Miyamura. Kakeru got curious about Miyamura's always covering up, even though it was a hot day. When he tried to strip him of his clothes, Shu barged in because he had left his phone. After seeing Kakeru trying to get Miyamura naked, he slowly and awkwardly retreated. Kakeru tried his best to explain what he was doing, but it was being taken out of context by Shu, so he just went back to bed. Toru overheard all this and just realized what Kakeru was trying to do. So he told Kakeru that he could just move the books and the table so that they could all fit there. The next day, the three boys all woke up. Shu was laughing while he was asleep, and Toru hit him. Kakeru woke up because of all the noise, but Miyamura was sleeping like a baby. Kakeru wanted to wake him up, but Toru gave him strange looks, and Shu wanted to wake him up as well. The gang ended up waking him up altogether. Toru warned Miyamura of Kakeru, and he tried to defend himself from these accusations. Miyamura stuttered and tried to believe him. He needed to use the bathroom, so he went ahead. Kakeru explained what he was trying to do last night because he wanted to know why Miyamura hid his skin all the time. Miyamura returned from the bathroom only to be greeted by curious looks from Shu and Kakeru. Toru covered Miyamura by telling them that he could shoot a bazooka out of his solar plexus. The next day, Kakeru and Toru are in the student council room, and Kakeru is still trying to figure out why Miyamura is hiding his skin. He doesn't believe that Toru knows why Miyamura is doing that. Just then, Miyamura came into the room to warm himself up. Kakeru tried a lot of things to get him to take off his clothes, and finally, Miyamura gave in when Kakeru lent him his sweater. As he was about to take off his sweater, Toru tried to distract Kakeru by dropping some stuff on the floor, making Kakeru miss seeing Miyamura's tattooed body. Kakeru gave up and told Miyamura that the reason he's doing all of this is because he wants to know why he kept hiding his skin. Miyamura tried gaslighting Kakeru and left the student council room. Both of them left wearing each other's sweaters. If you liked the recap so far, don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe. Remy and Kakeru are walking together, and Remy feels cold. He tried holding Kakeru's hand so that she'd feel warm. Eventually, Kakeru got the hint and held her hand on their way home from school. Remy told Kakeru how much she loved holding his bony hands. Kakeru didn't seem to understand, but Remy kept on hinting that she wanted Kakeru to be a little more sweet and asked for a hug. Kakeru caught up and hugged her, but Remy went a little too far when she asked for a kiss in a public place. Sakura and Remy are at the library and are about to go home. Remy is confident that she can do her math homework all by herself. Sakura went ahead, but went straight to Kakeru's class and asked if they could go home together. But Hori and Yuki saw all of this and got curious. Surely nothing was going on between Sakura and Kakeru, but Remy came running down the hallway, asking if they saw Kakeru or Sakura. Hori started having thoughts of Kakeru and Sakura's infidelity. Yuki tried to tell Remy, but Hori stopped her before she could even say anything. Remy tried calling Kakeru on the phone, but Hori distracted her and did not allow that to happen. Toru caught sight of Kakeru and Sakura at the burger place, and he noticed that Sakura had a gift. Toru thought that it came from Kakeru. He's with Shu, and I told him everything. Shu started thinking that Kakeru was cheating on Remy, but Toru told him to calm down, as this might not be the reason they thought it could be. Kakeru overheard Shu's loud voice and explicitly told him not to tell anyone that he was there with Sakura. As Kakeru and Sakura parted ways, she remembered how she tried motivating Remy to get a higher score in math so that she could treat her. But Remy refused the offer, as she said that she is not motivated by material things. She let Kakeru know about this, so that's the reason why she has the gift bag. The next day, Sakura arrived in class with the gift bag in her hand. Remy greeted her and asked why she left her yesterday. Sakura explained that she bought the cookies Remy had been talking about. As the two shared the cookies, Remy thanked her for being a good friend and motivating her to do better in her exams. And she asked to save some for Kakeru, but Sakura refused and tried impersonating Kakeru. Kakeru heard all this and tried to barge in, but it's a good thing that Toru stopped him from embarrassing. The mock exams just finished, and Hori and Sakura just got out of school. She thought she did pretty well, and this year was a lot of fun. Sakura is someone who works hard at school, but her guilty pleasure is reading manga. She screamed as she found out a shocking revelation in the comic she was reading. She couldn't wait for the next chapter to be released next week. Such is the life of an avid comic book reader. A week passed, and Sakura had been looking forward to the new chapter of the manga she was reading, but to her surprise, it sold out quickly. This heartbreaking news got her into the blues. Just then, one of her schoolmates, Yanagi, noticed her cringeworthy tantrum and offered to give her a copy that he got, and this was out of his kindness, as he was just passing the time while waiting for the bus. Sakura turned a complete 180, as she is extremely happy, relieved, and grateful for the offer, though she did refuse it at first. When Yanagi left the store, he felt so embarrassed, as he thought that Sakura reminded her of a fictional character because of what she did. And Sakura felt the same awkwardness due to her fangirling over the characters in the manga. Note to self, try not to be this awkward with anyone. The next day, Yanagi and Sakura met again, and they were both going to the bookstore for the weekly Shinobi release. Even though other students mock them, Yanagi tries to keep close to Sakura because he thinks that Sakura is cooler than he is. Yanagi is quite a peculiar character in Sakura's eyes, despite her awkwardness. Speaking of eyes, Yanagi switched to wearing contacts and wanted to try a different style of glasses, so he invited Sakura to go frame shopping. Sakura stammered and couldn't believe that she had been invited by Yanagi, so she reluctantly accepted his invitation. Yanagi compared their names to trees, which left Sakura feeling flustered and completely giddy. They got to the frame shop, and sure enough, Sakura thought that Yanagi looked gorgeous in any frame he wore. The next day, Yuki thought of a plot about how two individuals who like each other swap bodies. She thought of how Hori and Miyamura would sound if they swapped bodies and took it further, when she imagined this happening to Shu, Sengoku, Remy, Sakura, Yanagi, and Toru. Toru tried getting Yuki to snap out of it because she was weirding everyone out, but she was stuck in her romantic fantasy, imagining what would happen if the swapped bodies needed to go potty. In the library, Hori and Yuki are trying to study, but Yuki is goofing off too much, so Hori decides to leave to get some supplies for their study session. While Yuki waits for Hori, she remembers that she needs red pens and exclaims that she forgot to ask Hori to get some. This surprised Yanagi, who came inside and dropped his books. Yuki tried helping him out, and his hand touched hers, only for Yuki to realize how cold his hands were. Yuki rushed to Toru and tried explaining to him that her hands were cold. Toru offered to warm her hands and hold her, but she pushed her away. Toru is completely confused about what she wants, and after Yuki tells him what happened, Toru thinks that she is prohibiting him from touching her. Toru didn't understand her, so he let her be. Yuki thought of how cold Yanagi's hands were, but they warmed up when he was with her. Miyamura left to make a stop at the store. It was cold outside, and just then, a scarf dropped from above, and to Miyamura's surprise, it landed in front of him. Sawada came rushing towards the scarf to pick it up, and Miyamura asked her what happened. He noticed that some of the girls peeking out the window, Sawada's classmates, seemed to be bullying her. After Sawada admitted it, Miyamura looked at them and mouthed, "Rotten hell, ugly cows," which completely pissed them off. This was a total 180 to Miyamura's calm demeanor. Sawada and Miyamura started walking home, and they talked about Sawada's bullying situation. Miyamura somehow saw his old self in Sawada, so he tried to give her some brotherly advice, saying that having a proper set of friends who appreciate her takes a lot of time and change. Sawada doubts Miyamura's credibility due to his friend group being popular and all. But Miyamura assures Sawada that she will be able to find the right group of people to bond with. The next day, Sawada overheard some of her classmates talking about her, how she's close with some of the senior students, and how they think of her as a stuck-up individual. Sawada never understood why this is a problem, and that maybe it's not that she gets along with the seniors, but rather that she doesn't know how to get along with her classmates. Have you ever felt like Sawada? Like you somehow don't belong in the group that you're in? Tell us your story in the comments. Later on, Yuki, Remi, and Sawada meet, and Sawada asks if she's weird, but Remi and Yuki disagree that there's something wrong with her weirdness, and even brag that they're the definition of weird. After knowing Sawada's predicament of not fitting in with the rest of her grade and her concern about being too close with her seniors, Yuki and Remi offered to listen to her and be the listening ear she needed, like two big sisters. This cheered Sawada up a little, but she could do without sampling the candied beetle Remi offered. Back in class, Sawada's classmates are trying to post their club invitation on a bulletin board, but they don't know where to post it, as putting the sign in the main entrance might cause chaos with the third year. Well, at least that's what they assumed. Sawada wanted to help out her classmates, so she tried getting the poster up on a secluded board near the staircase. Sengoku and Remi saw Sawada and decided to help her. Yuki walked past them, imagining how cute they were as a family. After helping Sawada take down the poster by sitting on Sengoku's very skinny and fragile shoulders, they went and led Sawada to the bulletin board near the main entrance, with Sengoku still carrying her with great effort, like a Jenga tower that's about to collapse. Sawada thought they were off limits there, but Sengoku said that this bulletin board near the main entrance was free for any student to use. After heartfelt gratitude, Remi and Sengoku offered candy to Sawada. Shimura, one of Sawada's classmates, saw everything that happened. The next day, Sawada's classmates thanked her for helping them out, and she finally was able to connect with her own. Even her classmates asked her ridiculous questions, like how Sengoku's shoulders are her private vehicle and how she's related to Miyamura. I mean, they kind of do look alike. One afternoon, Toru was helping Yanagi look for his contacts. Just then, Sengoku came out of the student council room and saw Toru kneeling towards Yanagi, and he misinterpreted the situation, thinking of how or what Yanagi did to make him kneel like that. Since Yanagi's vision was bad, he squinted his eyes to get a good look at Sengoku. Sengoku thought he was trying to intimidate him, so he ran away. Toru found Yanagi's contacts, and he could see them again. He thought that someone was in the hallway, while Sengoku ran to their classroom, panting and scared to death. It was the end of another school day, and Hori was looking forward to meeting up with Yanagi, but he skipped the morning class regularly, as Miyamura observed. Miyamura then saw Yanagi and called him by his first name, and he bade him goodbye. This annoyed and infuriated Hori, as she was jealous that Miyamura could call Yanagi by his first name. Remi came into the room and was looking for Yanagi because she had cookies that she wanted to give him. Since he left, Remi offered Hori some cookies. She refused but took that statement back later on after finding out that Sakura made the cookies, which is a bit of a low blow to Remi. Miyamura overheard some students talking about how the bus was late, and this gave him an idea. At the bus stop, Yanagi is waiting for the next bus to ride on, but since it's been taking so long, he's starting to feel a little chilly. Remi suddenly showed up and tried to hit Yanagi. Hori also appeared and did a bit with Remi, but they both ended up telling Yanagi that the bus would be late. Miyamura bought some hot drinks for all of them, and Hori reminded Yanagi that waiting out in the cold isn't as good as it sounds, but not if you're with your friends. Yanagi received a message from his father that they'd be going out somewhere special for dinner tonight, and after hearing that the whole plan to follow Yanagi and keep him company was his, Yanagi decided to join them. The next day, Yanagi's class got reprimanded for the tardiness of some students in their electives, so their teacher set an ultimatum. Later on, after poking fun at how Sengoku writes text messages, they noticed that Yanagi was tired and a little stressed out. He explained that it was due to their teacher's warning. Yanagi told his friends that he was having trouble sleeping and waking up via his alarm clock. Miyamura and the others offered to give him a wake-up call. Toru still teased Sengoku and asked him to send him a text instead. Yanagi felt ashamed and promised not to let his friends down. The next day, Yanagi still had trouble waking up and even threw his alarm clock on the floor. The wake-up call didn't even help, as he just hung up on them. The text did the trick, though, as Yanagi said that he burst out laughing after seeing Sengoku's text, which got Sengoku confused about whether that was supposed to be a good thing or not. Toru still offered to wake him up, but Yanagi wanted to do things on his own without training wheels, but then he failed again as his alarm clock did not wake him up at all. Yanagi was at a vending machine, and he seemed to be having a hard time picking out his beverage. Sengoku saw this and decided to help him out. and after accidentally picking up a random drink, Sengoku tried to strike up a conversation about how Yanagi was so casual with his classmates and friends, but was so courteous and formal with the rest of them. Yanagi explained how his level of interaction depends on whether he's close or wants to get close to other people. Sengoku took this to heart, and he misunderstood what Yanagi was trying to say. Toru and Shu got to the council room and noticed that Sengoku was down in the dumps. After trying to find out what was wrong with him, Sengoku just gave a vague answer that he got rejected, which had Shu believing that Remi was single again. But Sengoku protested that she was not. Sengoku explained how Yanagi felt like he didn't want to become close to him, and Toru bragged about how they were close. But Shu and Toru assured Sengoku that Yanagi meant well, and he was like that with most people. The next day, Sengoku was the one at the vending machine this time and was surprised when Yanagi decided to approach him. After getting a horrible drink, Yanagi offered to get him another drink and trade the one he had. Sengoku noticed how Yanagi talked to him this time, but after understanding Yanagi more, Sengoku let him know that it was okay if Yanagi talked formally to him, and the two make up. It was bragging rights for Sengoku when he met Toru and Shu. As Yanagi was returning to his classroom, he met Remi. Yanagi realizes how blunt Remi is and hopes that Sengoku will be more like her, but he shakes off this thought. One Remi is enough. When Shu and Yanagi were playing around, Toru and Sengoku came by to chat. Shu bragged about how he was able to catch a blade with his hands, but Yanagi proved him wrong. Sengoku noticed how Yanagi connected with gullible people and, as Toru would call them, airheads. Toru tried giving him some advice but got ignored when Sengoku remembered how Yuki apologized to a wall after bumping into it in an accident, and it escalated into a stare-down. Sengoku is cringing, but Toru tells him to embrace his inner airhead if he wants to appear friendlier. Toru demonstrated how this was supposed to be by tickling Yanagi. So after that, Sengoku tried to practice on Toru, but ended up touching him inappropriately. This started a domino of bad things for Sengoku. He got called a pervert, and Miyamura passed by just in time to jeer in and tease Sengoku. But he ended up being called a bully. Sengoku is in hot water with no way out, but I'm pretty sure they're just teasing him. He's just taking it too seriously. Shu and Yanagi are hearing all the commotion, but Yanagi thinks that Sengoku is a great guy just as he is, and he doesn't need to change anything about his personality whatsoever. The whole thing seems to have been resolved, but Miyamura had to call Sengoku a pervert, unintentionally of course. This infuriated Sengoku, and he asked that they talk in the student council room about making a careless comment like that. Miyamura, the clueless guy that he is, didn't know why he was being reprimanded. It was another school day, and Mr. Yasuda was dozing off, and Miss Terajima was trying to wake him up or else he'd miss his class, but he was in a deep slumber. A pair of senior high school girls passed by and noticed Mr. Yasuda and his soft hair. The two started playing with it and ended up tying two small pigtails at the edge of it. Mr. Yasuda was finally awake after Miss Terajima tried waking him up for the nth time, but the nerve of this guy getting angry after waking him up was quite annoying. Anyway, Miss Terajima tried telling him that there was something wrong with his hair, but he didn't listen and just left. In class, Mr. Yasuda tried explaining how the class still needs to answer the exam questions even if they don't know the answer. The entire class had puzzled looks on their faces and was quite unsure how to address Yasuda's ridiculous hairdo. Hori and Miyamura tried to tell him, but they didn't dare to tell him without being disrespectful, and Yasuda started to notice their weird behavior. Just then, Yuki arrived, panting and late for class. After seeing Yasuda's hairstyle, she burst out laughing, and the class started laughing out loud too. Yuki had to give him a mirror just so he could see it for himself. Yasuda was stunned and embarrassed. Imagine walking around school all day with bad hair. Yasuda returned to the faculty room in a fit, though he was frustrated with the fact that he wasn't awake when girls were touching and playing with his hair, much to Miss Terajima's disgust. Yasuda needed the keys to the reference room and asked Terajima, but she didn't know them as well, so she said to ask Mr. Nakamine, the physics teacher. Yasuda met up with Nakamine to ask for the keys, but he said that he had returned them. He tried looking for it in his pockets, and it turns out he did have a key, but not for the reference room, but for his bike lock, and he thought that he lost this key a few summers ago. Talk about careless, but he is quite the type who's slow-witted. Toru, Hori, and Yuki happened to pass by and saw Nakamine drop a lot of keys out of his lab coat. Nakamine seems to be dropping a lot of his keys as he leaves a trail of them, and Yuki notices it, as well as the hole in his pocket, so Yuki offers to repair his coat as she always has a sewing kit handy. Nakamine doesn't seem to remember Yuki as one of his students, but after a long talk, he seems to remember her. Toru and Yasuda saw Yuki's and Nakamine's interaction by the window. Toru seemed jealous and was very upset with what he was seeing, while Yasuda was frustrated that Nakamine got into a room alone with a high school girl. Yuki tried holding Nakamine's hand and eventually saw Toru by the window. Later, in the hallway, Toru and Yuki talked about what happened, and Yuki explained that he tried to read Mr. Nakamine's hands. Toru couldn't believe it at first and thought it was a bit dumb. What's even funnier is that Toru thought that she knew how to read someone's fate using their palms, but it turns out she just likes describing how they look and feel. So that misunderstanding is settled, and Toru feels quite secure about Yuki. Shu happened to pass them by and told Toru that Miyamura confirmed tomorrow's meetup. Yuki wanted to come out of curiosity, but Shu said that it was an all-boys affair. The next day, Shu, Toru, and Miyamura snuck inside a classroom, and Yasuda happened to be walking by the hallway and overheard their conversation. Hearing how they're describing something big almost sounded too implicit. Yasuda barged in and, out of context, caught the boys red-handed eating a whole chocolate cake. At Yasuda's office, the boys are being reprimanded for their cake eating, which is quite ridiculous, but to steer the topic away from their trouble, the three ask where he lives and if he has a girlfriend. Yasuda told them that he lived alone, and the boys figured out that this could be the reason why he was into high school girls and urged him to try and get a girlfriend his age, and that he should try to marry soon. Yasuda did want to get married before Nakamine, but he realized that the boys were distracting him by making small talk. Miyamura and Shu wanted to visit Yasuda's place, but he refused unless Miyamura and Toru brought Hori, Remi, and Sakura. This disgusted Miyamura, and Shu pointed out that Remi and Sakura couldn't tolerate him. Yasuda felt sorry for him, but he remembered the gigantic cake. He gave up on bringing it up and told them to go back to class. Yasuda let them off the hook this time, but told them next time to bring him some cake. Miyamura asked if Yasuda could keep the cake for now, and if he'd come back for it after school. Yasuda was cool enough to redeem himself and keep the cake safe. At the school lab, Miss Terajima is surprised to see a box of cakes in a fridge meant for experiments and other chemicals. Back at the student council room, Sengoku watched the clock tick its final minute until it reached 9 p.m. It turned out the doors were locked from the outside, and he was stuck in there with Hori of all the people. Sengoku thought that they got drugged somehow and attempted to call someone in the faculty, but his phone battery died. Hori woke up, and Sengoku told her that they were locked inside the student council room. Hori is now in a state of panic, but is a little more aggressive towards Sengoku. It's a good thing that Hori has her phone, and she was able to contact the school faculty using the student handbook. Yasuda was able to let them out, and the two hurriedly ran to the bathroom. Well, thank you so much, Yasuda thought to himself. Yasuda talked to both of them to ask what happened and why they were still in the student council room. Sengoku and Hori explained that they were both fast asleep, but Yasuda assumed that they were getting it on. Hori hated the premise of being blamed and compared to other lewd students. Yasuda wanted to find out more, so he asked Hori to take her clothes off, and all of a sudden, Miss Terajima was beside him, caught in the act. Yasuda wasn't able to read the room and even asked Terajima to check Sengoku for any marks while he checked Hori. Terajima found it curious if he'd done something like this in the past, so she asked Hori and Sengoku to go home. The next day, Hori told Miyamura what happened, and it had him worried. She did mention that she was stuck in a room with Sengoku. Sengoku happened to pass by, and Miyamura immediately asked if he was okay when he got stuck in a room with Hori. It seems that Miyamura is more worried about Sengoku being stuck with Hori than the other way around. Hori asked what he meant and was prepared to open a can of whoop-ass on the both of them. Just then, Yasuda appeared and told Hori to calm down, much to everyone's surprise. It seems that something happened to Yasuda after being left with Terajima last night. Hori praised her for that, but a lot of students felt uneasy with the new Yasuda as he walked by with a brighter demeanor. It was another ordinary school day. Miyamura walked past his classroom and met Hori, who wanted to see the premiere of a horror flick, much to his disappointment as he's not really a fan of horror films, but he reluctantly accepted the invitation. Meanwhile, their classmate Watabe is observing Miyamura from a distance and admiring his new look. But he thinks back about how his old look with his long hair added a sense of mystery to his appearance, and he took a photo of Miyamura without him knowing. It's kind of weird if you ask me, and it's giving off a stalker vibe. During class, Miyamura surprised Watabe, who was reading, and asked what he was reading. Unfortunately, his taste for horror stories didn't really impress Miyamura. He even told him that he and Hori would be the best of friends because of their love for the horror genre. Watabe was a bit disheartened, but Miyamura picked this up, and he said yes and sincerely. At the Hori household, Miyamura just arrived, and Kiyosuke excitedly offered him chawanmushi, which he proudly prepared, and soda even helped by adding ginkgo nuts to it. Kyoko eyed Miyamura closely and took him by surprise. She could detect if Miyamura had interacted with other guys by his scent. Miyamura found this odd and wanted to learn it too, just in case the same thing happened to Kyoko. She then struck a deal with Miyamura to relieve him of his worries. If she cheats on him, she'll be the first to tell him, and Miyamura agreed. The next day, Miyamura was observing Toru, Shu, and Sengoku and actually sniffed them and tried to remember their scent, but Miyamura wasn't able to do so and was just left disappointed. Back at Miyamura's place, Shindo came over after Miyamura's invitation, but he thought he got invited over because of a controller that Miyamura borrowed. Miyamura asked him to close his eyes, but Shindo thought he was going to get murdered, so Miyamura agreed to keep his eyes open. Once again, he sniffed him out in order to memorize his scent in case Shindo made a move on Hori. The next day at school, it was table tennis day, and Watabe was still taking pictures of Miyamura while he was playing. Toru tried to break the tension and wanted to ask if Watabe had a crush on Miyamura, but Watabe just answered broadly, saying how he finds Miyamura fascinating. Then Toru focused Watabe's attention on Hori, Miyamura's girlfriend, but he just found it adorable. The conversation got worse when Toru said Miyamura has guy friends from other schools, which fueled Watabe's fantasy even more. Toru tried not to get weirded out completely, but when Toru asked if he ever wanted to talk to Miyamura, Watabe said no, ever since he recorded Miyamura and showed him a video of him that he captured from his phone. Miyamura approached them, and Watabe just lost it and said that he could die a happy man. This made Toru even more concerned. At Hori's house, Miyamura was welcomed with seething rage by Hori as she detected, again, a strong scent from Watabe. Miyamura is completely confused and terrified, as he doesn't understand how she can detect it, even if they don't talk that much. Hori explained that she could detect Watabe's scent and his interest in Miyamura. Miyamura tried doing the same thing to Hori as he got close to her, and gave her a hug to get a good whiff of her. Hori was stunned, and Miyamura never understood the whole smell, as he only smelled Hori's scent. After letting her go, Hori got even angrier as she thought that Miyamura was going to do something romantic like manhandle her, but unfortunately, he was really just trying to smell her. The next day, Miyamura came to class with a bandage on his left cheek. Toru and Yuki saw this firsthand, and Miyamura just hinted that Hori was the cause of his injury. Then Hori came in and had a small bandage on her cheek too. Toru thought Miyamura hit her back, but he explained how Hori slapped her while she was having her tantrums, and then accidentally hit her face against a wall as she was trying to leave the conversation. Miyamura sets his foot down and does not apologize to Hori, at least until she starts. Later, in the student council room, Hori is trying to blow off steam, and a lot of it too. She's still pissed at Miyamura, but when Remi and Sakura try to cheer her up and reassure her, she just tells them that guys are just as dangerous. Hori tried to wake up Sengoku just so he would pay attention, but he just gave his 2 cents about the situation and warned Hori that if she pushed Miyamura too far, he might stop caring. Sakura agreed, but Hori seemed to have a bias when listening to other people's advice, so she listened to Sakura instead, but this still did not make her feel any better. Who do you think is right in this situation, Miyamura or Hori? Leave a comment down below if you have some 2 cents in this situation. During their English class, Toru, Yuki, Hori, and Miyamura work as a group, and they need to submit their opinions. Toru is begging them to cooperate, but the two just do not get along. During break time, Toru begged Miyamura to make up with Hori, but Miyamura was too exhausted to remember the reason why he was mad. Miyamura received a text message from Hori saying that her period was late, making him spit his drink directly at Toru. But then he received another follow-up message from Hori saying it was just a joke, which didn't really help Miyamura's problem. Hori was sitting by the school entrance when she reflected on how she treated Miyamura and how she should just say sorry and get over it, but her pride got in the way. Yasuda asked Miyamura where Hori was as she missed the last class. He tried looking for him at the nurse's office and in the girls' locker room, but paused. There's no way Miyamura heard what he just said and that he snuck in the girls' locker room, so he asked if he really did that, but Yasuda just brushed the question off by saying that he's worried about Hori now because she left her bag and he hopes she's not out in the cold. Miyamura found Hori by the school entrance, and the two finally talked. Hori thought they'd already broken up because of how she treated him, but Miyamura never thought of that, and tried to cheer her up, made up with her, and told her how he felt about her. This placed Hori in a hot seat as she felt embarrassed, and she didn't know how to respond to that. Miyamura accidentally apologized, and Hori went on a fit again, saying that he shouldn't have done that because he was not at fault anyway. Yuki and Toru are seeing this all from afar and since they don't understand what's going on, they got really scared. The next day, Miyamura came to class with a hoodie under his school coat, but Hori, Yuki, and Toru didn't feel like it suited Miyamura. Hori complimented him, telling Miyamura that it's nice to spice things up once in a while. Just then, Shu barged into the classroom, asking for the textbook that someone borrowed from him from this class. When he saw Miyamura's outfit, he thought that he was copying him, and finally got excited that his look was finally catching on, although it definitely violated the school's dress code. Shu tried fixing Miyamura's appearance to mimic his, but he was driven out by Hori. Hori warned him not to end up like Shu. Well, style-wise, that is. Sengoku went to the classroom after finding out that Miyamura violated the school dress code and was reprimanded. But when Sengoku was questioned about why he didn't scold Shu, he just shrugged, saying that he was already a lost cause anyway. As they were on the way to the cafeteria to try the school's new flavor of hot tea, Yuki and Toru went ahead, talking, while Hori and Miyamura got left behind. Hori tried to fix his hoodie, but when she placed her head against it, Miyamura was surprised. Miyamura told Toru that he's going back to the proper school dress code tomorrow, but Hori just kept on staring at him the entire day. When school ended, Miyamura decided to just go home instead of going to Hori's place. The next day, as they were on their way to school, Hori was still uneasy about Miyamura, even though he was wearing his complete school uniform now, so she pulled him to an alleyway and sniffed his hand. She's glad that she can smell him again. Miyamura explained that the hoodie was Shindo's, and that he had left it at his apartment. Hori told him to make sure that he returned the hoodie. Suddenly, Miyamura held her face and kissed her. They got back to their classmates, who were also on the way to school. They were as red as tomatoes, but they were quite happy to start the day, nonetheless. Sawada is hanging out with Miyamura in his apartment and is trying to bug him about what present to give Hori on Valentine's Day, and more importantly, the gift wrapper. Miyamura didn't really like her hanging out in the apartment. He tried to ask her to leave but got reprimanded because he hadn't even prepared anything for Hori on Valentine's Day. Imagine being told off by someone younger than you. After a long and pushy discussion, Miyamura decided he'd wrap the presents himself in Hori's favorite color, at least in Miyamura's theory. Back in Sawada's class, she's greeted by her classmates. It seems that she now has a healthy friendship with her classmates. In the hallway, Remi, Sakura, and Hori are talking about what gifts Hori will give Miyamura, but she doesn't have any in mind, even though she knows that Miyamura will give her something. Remi suggested making something for him like a pastry, but she knows that it's a terrible idea as it's incomparable to Miyamura's baked goods, and buying from a store is just as bad. Miyamura and Sawada were also discussing something when Hori almost caught them. Sawada is pumped about her gift for Hori and almost spills the beans. One of Sawada's classmates asked if she knew any of the older batches because she wanted to give a gift to Shu. Sawada couldn't believe her ears and even wanted to make sure that she knew exactly who she was talking about. The girl is so smitten as she tries to describe him, and Sawada tries to calm her down and just be direct about it and ask him out, but she just wants to give him a gift. It's a good thing that they talked about it because she doesn't really have anyone to talk to about this and just needs to let all of her feelings out since Sawada knows most of her seniors. It looks like Sawada unknowingly became best friends with one of her classmates. Toru, Shu, and Miyamura are trying to practice trying neckties while Shu is grumbling about how Toru will probably get lots of chocolates and gifts from girls while he'll get nil. Miyamura ended up tying the necktie like a present. Just then, Sawada was hiding by the door when Shu saw her. She immediately ran past him and hid behind Miyamura. She tried asking Shu if he liked chocolate, much to everyone's surprise. But Sawada cleared out that the gifts wouldn't be coming from her, and this was a bit of a buzzkill on Shu's end. At the mall, Sawada and her classmates are shopping for chocolates. For the first time, Sawada is finally hanging out with someone other than Miyamura. Hori, on the other hand, is worried that Valentine's Day is nearing, and she doesn't even have a gift yet. She asked Sakura what she could whip up for Miyamura. That's foolproof, but still impressive. Sakura gave Hori a dessert cookbook so she could try out some recipes. So Hori tried to make one at home, and she did the best she could. Soda just crushed her efforts because he didn't quite like it. The rest of her family and Soda's friend Yuna tried it out to see if it's really that bad, but they're quite reluctant to tell Hori the truth, so they just gave her a thumbs up. A disappointed Hori faced Sakura the next day, but Sakura told the truth and said that it's not really that bad, and that guys like bittersweet treats anyway. However, this did not convince Hori. Sakura reminded Hori of what Remi said, that it's the thought that counts and that Miyamura would accept anything she made. It's Valentine's Day, and Miyamura is handing out his family brand sweets to his friends. Miyamura met Hori and asked her to come over to his place, but he asked her not to come too early and Hori agreed to meet up with him there. Sawada surprised Hori with a gift, and when Hori found out that Miyamura helped Sawada with the gift wrapping, she loved it even more. Yuki went ahead to the faculty room and gave gifts to Remi and Sakura, tiny chocolate pieces. The two girls appreciated the thought and effort. Sakura tried catching up to Yuki in the hallway and gave her a gift, which Yuki thought was just for Toru, but it turns out it's for the both of them. Sakura felt guilty receiving a present from her. Later that evening, Hori came by Miyamura's place, and Miyamura gave her a slice of chocolate cake. Of course, Hori couldn't really wait and helped herself. Miyamura was relieved because he wasn't able to wrap his present properly, so he had to show it to her at his place rather than bring it to hers. Hori felt so embarrassed because she didn't even bother to wrap her present, but it's too late now. Hori nervously presented her gift to Miyamura, and his eyes sparkled at the sight of the chocolate ganache squares Hori made. While Hori is busy with her thoughts of how she could have at least wrapped her present, Miyamura almost finishes the whole batch of ganache, but to ease her worries, Miyamura lets her try her own cooking. And it turns out it's not so bad after all. Well, it's edible to say the least. Hori came to realize that Miyamura is just as worried about his present as she is about hers. It gave her a sense of relief, and she is happy enough that Miyamura appreciated her gift. The day hasn't ended yet, and Miyamura is already talking about next year's Valentine's Day gifts. We now go to a different time, back during Kiyosuke's, and Hori's dad was quite the rebel back then, even as a first year. He rode motorcycles to school and was quite popular with the girls, but he was a heartbreaker. He met Hori's mother, Yuriko Koyanagi, in high school, and she was a student council president back then. Sengoku's father, Takeru, was also class president during his third year. Kyosuke met Koyanagi when she was moving some boxes for Sengoku, and their first meetup was quite an awkward one, as Kyosuke tried defending Koyanagi when Takeru didn't even say thank you after they moved boxes. But he really meant no disrespect and thanked Koyanagi, and he also reprimanded Kyosuke for not wearing his uniform properly. Though it was an awkward first meeting, something made Kyosuke draw closer to Koyanagi. Her carefree attitude just stuck with him. Kyosuke tried to ask Koyanagi out while asking about her plans after graduation, but he just let that thought pass. He didn't want to ruin what he and Koyanagi had. There was even a time when a student confronted Koyanagi, and she was curious as to what Kyosuke saw in her. Koyanagi just shrugged it off, and this pissed her off, so the student kicked the locker beside Koyanagi to intimidate her. Kyosuke saw all this and tried to defend Koyanagi. He scolded the girl and told her to back off. Koyanagi didn't like that side of Kyosuke and told him that guys shouldn't raise their voices at girls, and then she slapped the girl to prove a point that girls can slap other girls. Kyosuke was amazed at how Koyanagi was able to fend for herself, and that's when he knew that this was the woman he wanted to marry. Back to the present, Kyosuke finished his story of how he met Hori's mother, Miyamura, who seems completely unimpressed. In that regard, Kyosuke explained that the slap that Miyamura gets from Hori is a form of love language, and it's also something that Hori got from her mother. Miyamura couldn't remember why he got slapped, and for some strange reason, his bruise started hurting a lot. Hori wanted to borrow Kyosuke's shirts because her clothes were in the laundry. Kyosuke wanted to make sure that she was okay with that because they were too big for her, but Hori didn't really mind. Soda showed Hori his new toy cat, and just then, Hori wondered if she could fit in his clothes, so she tried removing them. This creeped out Soda, and he even called her a devil ant, but he meant to say deviant. Kyosuke was shocked and asked if Hori had developed a brother compound, and he meant a brother complex. Hori is at her wit's end and has decided to just get clothes from Soda's closet. Kyosuke asked if he could invite Miyamura over. Hori didn't seem to care. Maybe it was out of frustration, too, so she said go ahead. Hori tried many different outfits, but none of them seemed to fit her as their elementary school clothes. Miyamura arrived, and when Hori came out wearing Soda's shirt, that definitely didn't fit her. She felt so embarrassed and asked Kyosuke why Miyamura was there, and she definitely said yes when he asked if it was okay to invite him. They argued while Hori's mom set the table for dinner and invited Miyamura to join them. Miyamura smiled because of how lively the household was. The next day, Soda is by the living room drawing and coloring on a piece of paper, and Hori notices that he's making a mess, so she tells him to go clean up his mess, but Soda isn't done yet, and he said that he'll clean up after he's done. Hori didn't believe him, however, and they started to argue with one another. Kyosuke got in and took Soda's side on this one. This infuriated Hori even more, but lo and behold, here comes Miyamura with a tray of freshly brewed tea, although he's not quite sure what's going on and is scared even to ask. They sat down and talked about it, and Miyamura said that Soda has been cleaning up after himself lately, and that he's doing it more consistently this time. Kyosuke, on the other hand, didn't really make things better and commented on how Hori's short temper seemed to be an abnormal thing. Hori got up, left the room, and went back to hers. After a while, she got out, but she didn't want to be touched by anyone. Soda cleaned up his stuff in the living room and gave him a pat on the head, but she was still mad at Miyamura and Kyosuke. Miyamura and Hori were studying in her room when Soda barged in and asked them to play with him and pretend that they were in outer space. Miyamura obliged, but Hori really wanted to study. After setting up a blue rug on the floor, Soda pretended that the blue rug was their spaceship, and anyone who stepped outside the blue rug died. Hori then pushed him off the blue rug and made Soda cry, and she even played with his toy. Miyamura tried talking to Hori about getting Soda back on their ship, but Hori disagreed and thought that Miyamura was a spy for Soda. Meanwhile, Soda snuck up behind and smacked the back of her head, and this made Hori go off, so Miyamura shouted at Soda to run for it. The next day, Hori and Miyamura are in the living room, accompanying Soda. Miyamura watches him closely as he is doing his assignment, kanji writing, and he wishes that his homework was as simple as Soda's. Hori reminded him that he was already a third-year high school student. When Soda needed a word for the next question, Hori just blurted out an answer, but Miyamura thought she should at least let Soda do the thinking. Kyosuke got home and smelled of cigarettes, and both Soda and Hori had something to say about it. Later on, Miyamura told them how hard it was to write his name in kanji when he was a kid, so Hori and Kyosuke had a laugh. Soda passed by the kitchen and saw the pile of dishes that were still in the sink, and he recalled how his mother appreciated it whenever Soda helped with the chores, so he started washing the dishes. Hori came and saw Soda doing the dishes. The little kid got scolded again and cried because of how Hori was always mad at him over the little things. Miyamura is also there to moderate and try to explain to both of them the points they're trying to make, and he told Hori that he hopes that she'll be able to express her feelings more rationally. This made Soda and Hori cry and cling to Miyamura. Kyosuke popped in to check on them, and Miyamura asked for help, but he didn't seem enthusiastic about joining in, so he left. Later, Miyamura tries to explain to Hori why he's not really good at reprimanding kids. Since he's an only child, he never knew how to handle little siblings, but he is trying his best. The soft-hearted Miyamura thought he was being harsh to Hori. Hori pouted and told him that he never takes her side, but Miyamura disagreed, and he'd only be mad when he knew that Hori was definitely in the wrong. Hori wanted to know more about how Miyamura would be mad, but he assured her that he wouldn't be physical when he did get mad. Sota came home from school and boasted about his family in his essay. He said the teacher commended him for it, and when Sota showed the essay to everyone else, it seemed that his entire family was left out, and the essay only contained everything about his big brother, Miyamura. Miyamura apologized for it, while everyone seemed disappointed. It's school day, and Miyamura arrives at Hori's household to fetch Hori, as she requested that they walk together. She slept last night since she stayed up late. Miyamura waited with Sota in the living room for quite a while. Miyamura wanted to check on her, and when he did, he found her sleeping in the room, and he shook her to wake up. Miyamura helped her fix up her hair, and when Hori stood up, she said she'd be out after going to the bathroom. While Miyamura was waiting outside, he heard a scream from Hori. When she rushed out, her hair was tied into a formal bun. Miyamura apologized, as they were already running late, and he needed to fix her hair, but deep down, he didn't know anything about hair. At school, Hori received many compliments about her hair, while Miyamura tried observing other people to see if their hair could be styled. Yuki's and Sengoku's hair is short, but Sakura's can be styled. Later, in the student council room, Hori ranted about how Miyamura's hair is too soft and silky, especially because he's a guy. Sengoku suggested that if she wanted to, she could just tie his hair to create creases, but Hori went overboard and messed up Miyamura's hair terribly. In the student council room, Sakura and Sengoku are cleaning up and fixing the stuff. Toru and Shu came in and helped out. Then Remi and Hori came back from a trash run. Yanagi came by to give Remi her phone she left by the bin, and Yanagi asked to help out. But this only frustrated Sengoku, as Yanagi was able to carry boxes, and then Miyamura came too with a heavy box. Remi tried defending Sengoku by saying that he was fine just the way he was. Yuki came into the room with a heavy box, so Yanagi tried to help her, but it was too heavy. So Sengoku came to the rescue, although it wasn't so much of a rescue as he struggled to even lift the box. While they're cleaning up, Shu rummages through some stuff and sees a photo of a beach. He imagined everyone having fun there, so he told them that it'd be cool if they went on a beach vacation. Everyone agreed and was psyched. We go way back a little, back before Hori and Miyamura met. Hori just picked up Sota from school, and both of them are heading home. Sota wanted omeris for dinner. At school, Sengoku returned Hori's math book, and a shy Remi explained why he returned it late. Toru then came in and tried asking her to hang out with him after school, but Yuki said that Hori would go home early. Toru respected that and left. The next day, Yuki and Hori talked about how Toru really likes Hori, but Hori said that she gets a lot of dates too. Yuki justified it by saying that she just wanted to break hearts and keep track of the guys who like her. Quite the red flag if you ask me. A wind swept the entire room, and Hori saw Miyamura. She didn't think much of him back then. Sakura met Hori back then when Sakura made a mess by the stairwell, and she helped her out. Shu was on the roof hanging out, and Hori saw this from afar. Hori also saw Yanagi during PE. All of the memories of how Hori's friend group expanded flashed back to her, but for some reason, she felt like she was missing someone. Back in class, Hori was about to leave when she dropped her phone underneath Miyamura's desk. She tried picking it up, but Miyamura ended up doing it and giving the phone back to her. She tried talking to him, but a vision of the present Miyamura just showed up. Hori woke up from her nap and noticed Miyamura wondering about something, so she asked him. He told her that he could have taken a different path and not tried to interact with Hori and the rest of their friends, but Hori said that fate wanted them to meet, and no matter what paths they take in life, they'll still find a way to meet one another. The things that happened to her throughout the year are things that she wouldn't miss or change for anything in the world. It was graduation day, and Hori and Miyamura went to get sushi. Hori told Miyamura that it was different back then when they were still shy, but she loved how they warmed up to one another, and how she eventually fell in love with him. And even though the future looks uncertain, she'd like to share that future with Miyamura, and she hopes that he feels the same way. And whenever they feel that they're at their lowest, she'd like that they can count on one another to be there. With a hopeful heart and Miyamura's hand in hers, Hori is looking forward to a brighter day, most especially days with Miyamura. Miyamura woke up because Hori called and asked him to come over. Miyamura went to Hori's house with a bag full of pastries. Soda was there to welcome him, but told him that he'd be late, and Soda beamed with the pastries that he bought. Hori came and seemed mad about something, but when she did show herself, she donned a shorter hairstyle. Miyamura hesitated to say anything at first, but he eventually said that he liked her new hairstyle. Hori did not believe it at all, but Miyamura was sincere with his compliment. Hori was nervous because she thought that he didn't like the boyish look, but Miyamura didn't seem to mind, and as a matter of fact, he was planning on getting a haircut too. Kyosuke came in and saw the couple in their new haircut. He thought they broke up, but really it was just a new hairstyle. Miyamura is not used to his new haircut, but he's slowly loving it. As Miyamura said, life with Hori is always an adventure. So that's it for Horimiya, The Missing Pieces. If you liked the recap so far, don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe.